Let's speak to Dr. Arthur Kennedy. He is a former Flagbearer aspirant of the NPP. Now, the party has found its foot in terms of getting a Flagbearer and a running mate going into election 2024. But let's speak to him and find out his thoughts on the choice of Dr. Opoku Prempeh and what that portends for the fortunes of the party going forward. Doc, thank you so much for joining us on Zoom.
Thank you for inviting me.
Great. I hope you're doing well.
Good morning to your viewers.
Fantastic. So, as it stands now, your party has settled on Dr. Opoku Prempeh to join Dr. Bawumia on the ticket for the party going into election 2024. What are your thoughts on this Bawumia-Napo duo?
Yeah, I congratulate Dr. Opoku Prempeh for his choice as running mate. Eventually, it will all come down to the candidate himself, and maybe in the case of the MPP, to the president who is not on the ballot. The researchers have always known that in such elections, the most important question is, would you vote for the outgoing president if he was still on the ballot? And if most people will vote for the president, if they could, they'll vote for the nominee of his party. So in a certain sense, that matters more than the choice of running mate. But I congratulate Dr. Opoku Prempeh for being chosen as the running mate.
Now, one of the albatross on the neck of Dr. Opoku Prempeh is his relation with the public. People have described him as arrogant, and they say this tag will eventually drag Dr. Bawumia. You don't think so?
Well, I mean, everything is yet to be done. This is a campaign. This is a new beginning. Yes, he's had some contentious relationship with the media, and he said some unfortunate things, but all of us have made mistakes before. So I believe that this election is yet to be won or lost. As the new British Prime Minister said earlier this morning, in politics, nothing is preordained. So there is a lot of campaigning yet to be done.
And does the choice of Dr. Opoku Prempeh inspire or inject energy into the MPP's tickets going into 2024?
I don't know that it inspires. My view is that a running mate is not that significant in who people choose to vote for or do not vote for. Like I said, I think actually the president who is not on the ballot matters more than the running mate or even the candidate in this instance.
So for you, it's going to center more on Dr. Bawumia and not necessarily who is on the ticket with?
Yes, Dr. Bawumia and the president and his record.
Right. So talking about the president in this particular issue, how exactly will that work out?
Well, it is actually pretty simple, and elections are actually very fundamental processes. If you walk around the streets and you ask 100 or 1,000 or whatever the appropriate number is, well balanced, if Nana Akufo-Addo was eligible for re-election, would you vote for him, yes or no? If a majority are voting for him, it bodes well for his party. If a majority will say no, then it doesn't bode well for his party.
Right. So that's the dynamics there. But also looking at the fortunes of the NPP going into the elections, some MPs even have expressed fear that, well, looking at the current situation economy-wise in the country and seeing what happened in Kenya, looks like a lot of people are displeased, and that could really backfire on the NPP.
And that is a very valid concern. Actually, what is at stake is not even just the fate of the MPP, it's the fate of our democracy. I think that there is significant discontent on our streets. Our young people are finishing university and not getting jobs. People are being charged bribes to get into government jobs, including even the security services. Our rivers are being polluted in the name of galamsey. The president and the NPP government have failed to fulfill two of the most significant promises the president made, which was protect the public purse, and I'll put my presidency on the line to fight galamsey. So given that Dr. Bawumia and Dr. Opoku Prempeh have a very steep hill to climb.
Right. And in terms of the despondency when it comes to the youth and how they feel, how do you think that the NPP can navigate these waters 5 months to the elections?
Well, I don't think it's just the NPP, but now that you said that, let me start with them. I think my own sense of the streets is that people are dissatisfied with the Nana Addo government. So any message of continuity rubs salt into people's wounds. So if people want to vote for Nana Addo and you are pledging continuity, then that will bode ill for you. People want to see how different Bawumia will be from Nana Akufo-Addo. That is why he kind of resorted to the schoolboy prank of a planke. So that is the first thing. But more to the point, I think that this is not just an NPP problem. It's a national problem that our democracy is facing a credibility crisis. And I think that particularly looking at Kenya, whose case I have followed keenly over the last few days, we should, as the Akans say, fetch water and put beside our beard when we see that other people's beards are on fire. We are very close to an explosion based on the despondency on our streets.
And for the MPs in our parliament, they have talked about the fact that, well, it could be largely as a result of the political class being delineated from the realities of the ordinary Ghanaian. Is that really the case?
Yeah, that is the case. And actually, Parliament, in the gap between now and election, Parliament could do a lot to restore hope. You know, things like public housing projects that have been abandoned while people have no housing. They can start holding the government to account on doing nothing about galamsey. They can start holding people to account about asset declaration forms that have not been made public, a myriad alphabet soup of deals that have not been proved, the death of the Techiman 8, the Sal case, the Santrofi Apafu, Lulubi and Lipe people who were disenfranchised the last time. These things by Parliament would begin to give people a glimmer of hope that the future will not be as dire as the present or the past.
And in all of this, should the president play a key role or an active role in the campaign of Dr. Bawumia?
If I was Dr. Bawumia, I wouldn't want him anywhere near my campaign.
Why not? I mean, he says the president is the driver, he's the mate, so once the mate he wants to take over from the driver, he should have some lessons as a guide for him from the driver.
Yeah, but he knows that the driver is heading in the wrong direction. So if the mate gets in the driver's seat, he should change direction. So if I was him, I wouldn't want the president anywhere near my campaign.
But knowing very well how it works in the party and all, do you think that indeed Dr. Bawumia can be his own man and not have the president anywhere near his campaign?
If he wants to win, he will be. If he doesn't want to win, then of course, the president was his godfather who blessed him with this nomination, and the president will take him to defeat.
And from all that you have seen over the years, do you see that happening? Dr. Bawumia being able to really cut off?
Well, we should always be careful about predicting what people will do. When you are staring at electoral defeat, sometimes you can do radical things. There are rumors, for example, that Dr. Opoku Prempeh was not the president's choice for running mate, but Dr. Bawumia picked him anyway. So I can't say what Dr. Bawumia will do or will not do, but I'm just saying that if I was Dr. Bawumia, the president will not be anywhere near my campaign, and I would boldly tell the people of Ghana about the mistakes that have been made, failing to protect the public purse, not fighting galamsey, the myriad alphabet soup of corruption, judicial malfeasance, undermining the integrity of a lot of our state agencies and institutions, and pledge that I will forge a new path.
And can Dr. Bawumia exonerate himself from any of this, the things you've mentioned that happened in this government?
Well, we are about to see. That will tell us his skill as a politician. But for now, he has a long road to hoe and a lot of campaigning left to do. But I think that this election is GHOne Mahama's to lose and Alan's to change.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean that looking at everything, taking into account the global winds of change, Ghana's tendency to change parties after every 8 years, Nana Addo's abysmal record, it means that if you look at things through the historical prism, the NDC seem to be slightly favored. Having said that, Alan is the new card. He's been a little complacent, but he's the person who can shake up this race and potentially take it to a second round. That aside, there's a lot of campaigning left to be done. So we should all hold on tight to our seats.
If elections were held today, now, will the NPP be able to break the 8?
The elections will not be held today, so that's hypothetical. And like I have just said in all the foregoing discussion, I think that Dr. Bawumia has a difficult task ahead of him. And maybe in the next 5-6 months, he can close the gap. But for now, it appears to me that Mr. Mahama, former President Mahama, appears to have the inside track a little bit.
Now, talking about Alan Kodjo Chebatin, I mean, the polls don't seem to favor him in any way, looking at what has been conducted even till date. What is Alan not getting right? You mentioned complacency, but is that really the case only?
Yes, it is. I think that he would make a fine president if he were elected, but so far he hasn't been an inspiring candidate. If you are going to go out on a third-party independent candidate as a maverick, then you ought to be a maverick. He seems to be too much of the establishment to attack it, and he's not going to be relevant unless he attacks the establishment and slays the sacred cows, which pushed him out of the party and which has marginalized him.
So for you, he's been to, he's dealing with the government with kid gloves. He's not able to punch as he should.
Yes, not at all. And I think that we don't know his ceiling yet, and it will depend on the aggression and passion and candor with which he addresses the issues confronting the country. If there is discontent on the streets, he's the most, he's the best positioned person to harvest the discontent. But all in all, the question is whether it will be first or second round. For now, it will appear to me this election is President Mahama's to lose.
Quite interesting, because Alan has presented his GTP, the Great Transformational Plan. He's told Ghanaians exactly how he wishes to transform the economy, among others, if he's elected president.
Yeah, and I have told Alan and a lot of his people that people don't vote on transformational plans. They vote with anger and frustration, as the Asantehene memorably told Nana Addo. So if Alan is going to succeed, he needs to harvest the anger on the streets. If he doesn't do that, no amount of plans and brofo and transformational talk will do anything. As for talk, yatia bread.
And you believe that's the general consensus of a lot of Ghanaians?
Absolutely. Because, you know, the problem with Ghana is not that we don't have plans. Actually, even Nana Addo's government has had a lot of very good plans. Those plans have been hampered by corruption and incompetence. So new plans will not change anybody's perspective.
And talking about Alan and the people surrounding him, the argument is that, well, these are people who also broke off from the stock of the NPP. So what difference will that really make to Alan's candidacy?
Well, it depends on what is it that they take away from the NPP. Yeah, there are some competent people around him. Nano Hininto is very competent. But at the end of the day, it goes to the core of Alan, whether he is too much of the establishment to break with it, or whether he is truly a transformative visionary who can inspire Ghanaians to follow him. That really is the issue.
And talking about John Dramani Mahama of the NDC, I mean, earlier the polls suggested he had wide margins. Now it looks like he's dwindling in terms of the numbers in the margins. Does that come as a surprise to you?
No, yes and no. I mean, the election will always close, getting to the end as more and more people focus on it. I think that maybe President Mahama needs to engage the public more. I think that, unlike a lot of people who are very pessimistic, I think I'm intrigued by President Mahama's campaign and his possible government, because he left the presidency in disgrace after a heavy defeat, first sitting president to lose one touch. So I think he's done a lot of reflection. I am just finishing a biography of Richard Nixon, and I am reflecting on what leaders do after they lose elections. I think that another term for President Mahama, if he is tuned to history and his conscience, might be a transformative term in which he will lead a government of national unity that will deliver hope to our despairing masses.
Quite interesting. And finally, let's touch on this. The Chief Justice has nominated some, or presented a list of some 5 judges to the President to nominate to the Supreme Court. Some say, well, the NDC, for instance, says the President is seeking to pack the bench. Others say, well, the Chief Justice did not have the locum to even suggest to the President who to appoint. Much ado about nothing?
It's much ado about nothing, but it tells us about the hubris of our establishment. We are sitting on the deck of the Titanic and moving chairs. We already have 15 Supreme Court justices. That is more than the United States that have 10 times our population. And the judiciary's reputation has taken a hit. He's not running the court well. There are a lot of Supreme Court justices who are unhappy with how she sets panels up without explaining to anybody, how she changes panels in the middle of cases. I think our judiciary needs major transformation. Our appellate process should be clarified. The formula for picking panels should be clear and not secretive. Panels should not be changed in the middle of cases. So our judiciary have a long road to hoe, and the idea that anybody would think of adding judges now it defies imagination. It just means that the person is not attuned to what is happening on our streets.
But her argument is that, well, the Supreme Court is inundated with a huge workload, for which reason they need more justices to be able to deal with the issues that come before them.
Yeah, but first, I read the Constitution on how you pick Supreme Court judges, and it does not say that the shall nominate judges for appointment to the Supreme Court. She ought to know the Constitution. She's the Chief Justice.
So the argument about the workload for you does not come in at all?
No, it doesn't. And if the United States with 330 million people can do with 9 Supreme Court justices, I don't know how and there are too many. It might mean that maybe they are taking on too many frivolous cases, or that she's not picking the panels more efficiently.
And after that, we've not heard anything from the presidency, nothing. We only heard from the Chief Justice herself providing justification again for why she did that. Are you surprised?
Yes, I'm surprised, but more to the point, the Chief Justice is never mentioned in the process of nominating judges to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
So if he is talking, maybe she will tell us her criteria, whether these people were picked because they were the brightest bulbs on the bench, or they are her friends, or they are loyal to her. And particularly when they include the judge who is presiding over the controversial trial on ambulances and catching flack for her really strange rulings. It almost suggests that she is being rewarded, unfortunately.
And the timing is also a problem for people because we have elections in, what, less than 5 months?
Absolutely. I mean, it is a very bad idea.
And so you would expect that the president would have spoken on this and said, you know what, we are not going to do this because of the timing and all of that?
To be fair to the president, though, this is just speculation in the weeds. You know, the Chief Justice has no locus to nominate Supreme Court justices. So this is just talk.
But the letter was sent to his office, actually.
I know the letter was sent to his office, but it should have come from the Judicial Council. That is what my reading of the Constitution tells me. So the Chief Justice on her own shouldn't be doing that.
Right. Mr. Kennedy, thank you so much, Doc, for your time this morning. And I'm sure that clearly you've touched on very key issues. But, I mean, going into the elections 2024, December 7, you've talked about what you see. But what about Ghanaians? What would be your word to them then?
My word for them is to vote your interest. You know, if you keep voting for people who keep breaking their promises and you keep voting for them, then you are doing something wrong too.
Really? And from the voting patterns you've seen over the years, do we vote for our interests? Do you see that play out?
No, we don't. We vote for our partisan satisfaction and for our ethnic satisfaction. And that hasn't led us anywhere. We need significant realignment of our political forces.
And what would cause that shift? Because as it stands now, I mean, we've heard of cases where people have told Ghanaians, well, people have short memories when it comes to the hardships they encounter and all of that. So what would be that force that would change the status quo?
Their pain on the streets, their frustration, their joblessness, the arrogance of power.
That should inform choices made in December.
Yes.
So that's for both presidency and parliamentary elections?
Every election. I think that there ought to be significant transformation of our relationship of governance. Electing DCs, separating parliament from the presidency. But I think that, in effect, the thing is leadership. Right. It's not just moving things on paper. It is leadership that delivers.
And talking about Parliament, has Parliament delivered as people hoped? Because when the numbers were a bit balanced, when we saw what we saw in this Parliament, a lot of people were of the view that, well, we're going to see some dramatic changes. But from your observation, have we really benefited from Parliament as it is now? Because the president says he would not even wish this kind of Parliament on his worst enemy.
Well, not really. I mean, I think that the star of this last 4 years has been the Speaker, who hasn't gotten enough attention, and the challenges that he has faced trying to, in effect, get this Parliament moving in the same direction. But I actually think that the fact that the Parliament couldn't do much may have been a blessing, because look at how much damage the president has done in the last 4 years. With a Parliament doing whatever he wanted, there would have been more damage.
So this hung Parliament really was a blessing?
In disguise.
In disguise. And you said the Speaker, he's been the star of Parliament and all of that. How so? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, because, you know, all the other speakers, the reason why they have been effective is that they had presidents behind them. So whenever the president wanted something done and the Speaker was leading Parliament, he was really leading Parliament to help the president achieve his agenda. This Speaker, unfortunately, doesn't have a president behind him. So it means that he could not rely on that core of support that every Speaker before him has had. He's trying to change things, but he virtually has no constituency. Even within his own party, there's division. For example, I reached out to him about the COVID funds, 3 billion, and he told me, he said, I referred it to the relevant committees. They didn't even mind me. So I think that the Speaker and he's, for example, gotten parliamentary rules redrafted. So with the benefit of hindsight, we found out that the Speaker in the last 4 years has done significant work, which has not borne fruit because he has not had as much cooperation as he needed.
Doc, thank you so much for joining us. We are grateful for your time this morning.
I thank you for the opportunity.
Fantastic.